listening to the House by the Video Store podcast.
There's no more room in hell. The dead will walk near.
We have such sights to show you.
I kick ass for the Lord!
Praise God! Give away!
Welcome to the House by Video Store podcast. I'm your host, William, and joined today will be Sean.
Hello.
And on this episode, we'll be discussing The Descent, the Neil Marshall movie that is essentially, so not to phrase this incorrectly, so when I've said before, like, oh, the ritual, and like the Descent and the ritual to me, it's like one's the male version and one's the female version. So the Descent is the female version of like a group after like shared trauma goes on a vacation somewhere in a remote place and things happen. The Descent is the female version. The ritual is the all male version.
And they're both British.
They're both British.
You know.
There's a lot of similarities. Came out like 10 years apart. And the Descent was obviously first and was from Neil Marshall. And then the ritual is from David Bruckner and just came out on Netflix recently.
I mean, that would be an awesome double bill.
Yeah.
Like, I love both those films.
Yeah, those would be good ones to throw on one after another because it just feels like content-wise and structure and all that stuff, they would go together pretty well.
And the audience for one film would be into the other one as well, I think.
Well, but in today's world, you unfortunately have like the men's rights activists that would be
screw
like,
them.
The Descent's terrible, the
Yeah.
ritual's so much better.
Yeah.
But so we'll be talking about the Descent is the featured movie. But before that, we'll go through some recent news and things we've been watching. Because on the news, some big things have happened since our last podcast. There's been confirmation or tweets out or Instagram posts from Rob Zombie that the movie 3 from Hell is shooting, which was, if not the sequel or the prequel or the side sequel or the reboot or whatever, it's a new movie in the Devil's Rejects House of Thousand Corpses series.
It's Devil's Rejects in space.
With Sid Haig, Bill Moseley, Sherry Moon Zombie. I think Barbara Crampton's in it, and there's some other genre people have been rolled out as being involved in it, and it's shooting. No idea what this plot synopsis is. When the time that's set in is it a sequel to Devil's Rejects? Because I think that the movie's called 3 from Hell, and House of Thousand Corpses had like the Dr. Satan stuff that leaned a little bit more into supernatural. But then Devil's Rejects really grounded it in more of like a 70s road exploitation film. And it feels like if they make the third one, 3 from Hell, is literally that the characters from the Devil's Rejects died, went to hell, and came back to Earth. That would feel to me like a really weird direction.
Yeah.
So, and they've all aged, 10 years because of Devil's Rejects came out in like 2005.
Wow, yeah.
So actually it's like 12 or 13 years, depending on when they started shooting it. So you have a pretty good amount of time that passed. So unless you just like put even scragglier, longer beard and hair on Bill Moseley and Sid Haig, I guess you could theoretically make it look like they're around the same age.
Yeah.
And then I guess Sherry Moon Zombie hasn't aged that much either, but it'll be interesting to see what direction they go in.
Yeah, I'm really curious to see how this turns out. I guess is this independently produced by him? Like, this almost seems like would have been ripe for Shudder or Netflix,
I haven't seen
to produce.
confirmation on. I don't know how the rights issues in those work in terms of who.
That's
owns the
where I feel
sequels.
like would be the best place to release that right now. Straight
Yeah.
to streaming. Of course, people want to own the Blu-rays and DVDs and stuff like that, and Netflix is a little bit slower. Or the films haven't came out; the seasons have, right, on disc. Netflix.
I don't think most of the stuff that was a Netflix only release got released on disc, unless I know like some movie we mentioned earlier, The Ritual in the UK, you could buy it on Blu-ray and DVD.
Yeah, but I think most of the movies, you can't. So
yeah, you can only, I guess people, if they really wanted to, could find some way to record it and then burn it to disc themselves, which is unfortunate because a lot of people would just pay to own some of those movies.
Yeah. But so this seems like ripe for the streaming service in this market, in this time where Rob Zombie's at in his career, and maybe the audience for this, because even though it is a well-loved sequel to, or The Devil's Rejects is well-loved, and it's a sequel to that, it has been 10 years, 11 years.
Well, and two, those movies, like Devil's Rejects was not a huge hit in theaters. It made like $15 million, which compared to budget and in the home video market at that point in time still being a viable option, it did make a profit, enough so that he got the Halloween movie. But the fact that you're talking about 2018, and these are movies that are kind of going to cater to the horror convention crowd more so than the crowd that's watching The Ritual, or not The Ritual. What was Veronica? Like the one that got all the buzz, like, oh, it's so scary. Nobody's gonna be talking about a Rob Zombie movie it's so scary. It's gonna be like, oh,
there's a lot of F words in that.
They
movie.
cuss a lot, and there's at least like 2 rapes.
Yeah, but I'm very curious to see how this is gonna go. It's also, it's a weird thing just seeing the trajectory of his career because his most successful film was the Halloween remakes.
Yeah.
And now this year we get a new Halloween and he's, doing 3 from Hell, and we don't even know if that's going to be, I would assume at most limited release in theaters.
Yeah.
At most.
Too, because 31, regardless of the quality of the movie, that movie was not made for a lot of money. It was shot mostly like in interior sets and things like that. So this movie is at the similar budget level. So they're kind of just squeezing the most they can out of like $500,000. Is it like a $5 million budget movie?
You should just do the Soderbergh thing, shot on iPhone.
Yeah, none of us have seen Unsane yet. I plan to try to see it in the next week, and based on the recording schedule of the podcast, it would take a while for us to get to that on the podcast, but I'll probably, if I do get a chance to see it, post something on Instagram or Facebook.
Yeah, right now we're still doing the record 2 in a row and then release a week apart. So sorry that second one's a little bit dated sometimes. This one's only going to be a couple days old when it goes up.
Yeah. So I'm excited to see what comes out of this, because I do think that the best work Rob Zombie's done is when he's worked with like Sid Haig and Bill Moseley, and that's just because they're really good at what they do, and they can elevate some of his dialogue that comes across poorly with lesser actors.
Yeah, with their experience working with him, they're on the same level, it seems like, as far as they, there may be some unspoken things like, okay, I get this is what you're going for. Even Bill Moseley at Days of the Dead last year here in Louisville at his panel, he was talking about for House of a Thousand Corpses, he really didn't get his character until either they were shooting the last scene or doing some reshoots. I think it was shooting like one of the last scenes, and then all of a sudden it clicked for him. Like, hey, I'm not trying to do Chop Top. Like, you know what I mean? Like originally he thought Rob Zombie just wanted him to do Chop Top, but it wasn't exactly that. And he kind of got like, okay, he brought me in because of Chop Top, but he wants me to do this other thing. And so with Devil's Rejects, he knew what he wanted from the beginning, and that film is so strong, and he's so strong in that. So they've been playing these characters for how many years now? Since we were in high school, well, like 2002 or like 1, whenever they started shooting that first one.
Yeah, but for Bill Moseley about Chop Top, so he played Chop Top in Texas Chainsaw 2, so he gets brought into this movie. They have like the kind of neon lit underground sets. Oh, that feels familiar.
Yeah. House of Thousands feels very
Texas Chainsaw Massacre 2 and House of Thousand Corpses feel like. It feels like House of Thousand Corpses, like the bastard offspring of like Texas Chainsaw 2. Like went to a bar and had to hook up with somebody they never talked to again, and then their kid grew up to be very much like them without being in the same room. But
it's just like Arnold's illegitimate child was made. Like that's House of a Thousand Corpses 2, the Arnold that is House of Texas Chainsaw 2.
Well, I think too, sometimes you see directors who want to go off in their own direction and try their hand at different things, like Rob Zombie did Lords of Salem. And then the fans don't show up in force for that, and they kind of just like, well, give us the thing we already wanted. Give us the thing we know we wanted. So then go back to the franchise, and and that series already had a sequel, so it's not like he was opposed to doing sequels, but because sometimes filmmakers, make a successful franchise film or a film that could be a franchise and decide they want to go out and do their own thing.
Yeah.
And then flail around for a bit and then come back to the thing they know will make money and that fans want.
Yeah. I mean, Devil Rejects is not universally loved, but I think even for people that dislike Rob Zombie and don't like him, that is the bright spot that everybody can point to, like, okay, that's some, you know what I mean? Like that, I think that was almost like the high water mark for being something that,
even if you
that you could understand why somebody would like, maybe.
And even if you hate his style in his movies, you can point to that one. It's like that movie had a style and it was a very defined vision as to what it was.
It was like perfectly executed. It seemed to be perfectly executed on what they were trying to accomplish. And I really loved that film when I saw it in theaters, and I still really like that movie.
Yeah, and we already discussed the Halloween a number of times, but yeah, so that's going to be, there's no real release date information, so as that gets, as that sprinkles out, we'll talk about that again. But
and then the Halloween remake, they said they'll have a cut of that in 6 weeks.
yeah, and
So
I think people been saying that like a trailer, it looks like May, June for a Halloween trailer. And then hopefully John Carpenter's still scoring it, because the last I heard he was.
he might have to see the rough cut first and then
Well, I think he was saying that he was waiting for the rough cut before or I guess you need to have it pretty locked to do the scoring.
Well, maybe he can make a decision. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like, hey, do I think this is total crap or not? Or
Well, he was on set for some
Yeah.
of it, but
yeah. So, and then also the chopping mall, which we covered for one Christmas podcast.
yeah, Christmas 2016 maybe.
Maybe I don't
think
know.
so.
It wasn't the first year of a podcast. It was, I think, the second maybe.
I had been 2016 because Chan was on.
Yeah. So watching that film, then I thought, oh, this would be right for a remake, just like
Yeah.
Maximum Overdrive. You know, with self-driving
robots go
cars and
crazy.
robots. You know, that robot that committed suicide. Like California in some mall or something.
Oh yeah, that went into the water.
Yeah. So like you think like, hey man, that's like a fun thing that you can make this hokey premise and kind of over the top movie if you want.
Yeah.
And it also feels, you know, more within reach than the film did back then. But yeah, so it is supernatural. And instead of killer robots, they are these mannequins that are possessed by the souls of dead slaves that worked at the plantation that the mall was built over.
So to me, that just feels like actually kind of like one of the segments within Tales from the Hood where the senator or the kind of racist politician guy moves into the mansion where there are the voodoo dolls possessed by like the souls of former slaves. So it feels kind of like that actually, but I guess they decided like, oh, Get Out, socially, conscious, racial tension driven suspense thriller worked. Let's just make a movie that has racial undertones and things like that. It's just, like you said though, Chopping Mall. Well, first off, the name Chopping Mall doesn't make a lot of sense because wasn't the movie originally called like Killbots or something?
I think so. Yeah, there was a different name.
There was originally a name that was like Killbots or something of that nature about robots, and they changed it to Chopping Mall. And then the poster for it looks like a slasher. Like people are getting hacked up and getting their limbs like put in bags or something. But then the movie itself is just about robots that drive around and kill a bunch of teens, including who all was in that? Barbara Crampton?
I can't remember, but I enjoy that movie for what it is.
Yeah.
That is a very much of its era, and it goes all the way. It is not a limp movie like some of those are, where they're pretty boring. There's some good kills in it, some ridiculous scenes, and it's pretty funny throughout too.
Oh, it was Dee Wallace.
Dee Wallace,
who's gonna be in the Three from Hell, not Barbara Crampton. I was confusing because I remember like everybody was talking about, oh, this horror person is gonna be in this. So
Dee Wallace has been in a lot
yes,
of horror films.
Dee Wallace, not Barbara Crampton. Maybe I was thinking of that Death House movie because I think they're both in that. But yeah, so like the Chopping Mall, like you said, like in today's world, you actually have robots in malls, and there's one that like ran over a kid, and then the one that like just drove into the water and died. So there are stories to be had.
There could be a fun movie in that.
I mean, because you don't have to go like the route of the original movie of it getting like struck by lightning and then being, becoming sentient evil creatures. Just have some kid like hack in and change their programming. Bada bing, bada boom. There's your setup.
And I'm not saying this movie will be bad because of this. It's just like it feels like you could, make that mannequin film with something else. And I get it, the name's there, the name recognition, because, Chopping Mall is such a huge mega hit that everybody knows.
Well, yeah, it's one of those Roger Corman produced movies that wasn't, it was like profitable and people have watched it now. But I think the name, they could just go the route of using that name to make ideas around a shopping mall. But then the thing
and
is,
then it's like, are you actually like making an exploitative film about slavery? You know what I mean? Like, are you exploiting the thing that you're criticizing that these people are exploited for their labor? And you know what I mean?
What they're probably going to do is have the mannequins. They want to have a trailer that shows a mannequin standing there and somebody walks by it and then you have a really creepy trailer, and then the mannequin kills
flashlights
somebody.
coming through in the dark, and then
So that like, because what was it? The trailer for Lights Out had like a scene where you had like mannequins, I think, or something.
yeah, I mean mannequins are scary. Okay, I get it. But.
So they're going for what they think sells now. Like I said, I just think that. I mean, but too, there's the other element of the American shopping mall is a very quickly dying thing.
Yeah, you got to make shopping mall now with killer robots.
Yeah.
Now is the perfect influx time before they die off, and the robots are at their rise right now.
Like, or maybe the shopping mall, shopping mall is delivery drones from Amazon get reprogrammed by hackers and then kill people.
Or to go cheap, they shoot it in an abandoned mall, and it is about kind of the decay of the current methods of shopping and everything else. Just the way we operate now in this culture, because there are so many shut down malls, and it would be a lot cheaper to do that than shoot in a mall overnight like they did with the
original
shopping mall.
Yeah,
which also too, the Dead Mall series from I Am Dan Bell, highly recommend that. I think I've brought it up before. He basically will go tour malls that are not totally defunct, but maybe have like just a handful of stores, and they're just like ghost towns. And that's what he is chronicling, like all these closing malls. Yeah. And I think he's also has said he's going to be doing Toys R Us too. Now that they're closing, he's going to do some coverage of that too. But I haven't listened to his podcast. He's done some other things too. I've only watched his Dead Mall series. He's very opinionated on Twitter, which I like. I like somebody that is like puts out their opinions out there.
Yeah.
So I need to dig into more of his stuff, but get Dan Bell on board. Yeah. Let him do some location scouting.
Yeah, so those are the recent news stories that have been in discussion. But before we discuss The Descent, we can briefly go through some things we've been watching. And a movie that I saw in theaters this weekend finally was The Strangers Prey at Night. So that was the belated sequel to the original Strangers like 10 years later. And it had Christina Hendricks in it. And basically it's if you've I'm sure know what the idea for The Strangers was, just people at a remote place and the quote-unquote strangers show up and just want to terrorize and murder because they can. And the sequel is those same characters, the killers, and you see a mom and dad and their two teenage kids go to stay at a trailer that's by some like vacation lake area. They're going to stay there overnight on the way to dropping their daughter off at boarding school that she's going to. And that's pretty much the entire setup. And, of course, the strangers are around and taunt and kill and things like that. And the original Strangers, it's been like I've mostly watched it in bits and pieces over the years. Mm-hmm.
I've only seen, I think I've seen a part of it on TV before, but I actually was going to sit down and watch it recently. I made it like 25 minutes in, and for some reason was like, all right, I'm not into this really. I know people like it, but I feel bad for not giving it a chance, but I just turned it off.
Well, you had it from 2008, so that was when, slashers were officially dead at that point. I mean, you had like the Rob Zombie reboot of Halloween and stuff like that, but outside of those, slashers weren't really being made that much anymore. So The Strangers is kind of what jump-started the big wave of home invasion or, the home invasion, stalk and slash type movies. And then you had things after that like You're Next and others. And then, actually tons of them. I'm just not off the top of my head remembering all of them. But The Strangers is one that was a big hit. I remember it like had a lot of cultural zeitgeist. A lot of people talked about it. And it's one of those things where I just watched parts of it, and I'd already been told that I had the ending spoiled for me from the beginning by somebody, and then so I just watched parts of it, and it was just at that point in time, 2008, it wasn't really my jam. So I was like, oh, okay, I understand this is popular and successful or whatever. The Strangers Prey at Night feels much more like a kind of standard slasher with less of the home invasion elements because they're inside of a trailer. And then they're mostly outdoors because a trailer is not very big. I mean, it's kind of hard to stalk and slash somebody in 450 square feet. So they mostly spend time throughout the trailer park, little vacation area. And then the idea is it's after Labor Day. It's before school starting. So it's after or maybe I don't know if it's before school, because school starts like in August, but it was after the summer vacation
everybody's
season.
cleared out.
So the only people who still were there were the main characters, like aunt and uncle, who owned the place, and that's where they go there. And then the movie just leaned very heavily into 80s music. Like there was like synth music. There was.
Which did the trailer really sell that much? I don't remember feeling that vibe heavily from the trailer.
Just a little bit.
Yeah, okay.
Then it had like that Bright Eye song, like "Turn Around."
Oh yeah.
Or yeah, I'm pretty sure that's what it was. And then so it had just a lot of callbacks to like 80s music. There's a set piece in it that takes place by the resort swimming pool that was for some reason still open despite no one being there. But it had like neon palm trees and stuff around it for decoration. So that was like a cool visual. And then they had music playing during it and stuff like that. So they really leaned heavy into the nostalgia and the visual aesthetic of the 80s. And they really played into the John Carpenter thing. Just having it feel kind of like Halloween, trying to go for like the, stalker following and things like that. So it just felt like it really went really heavy into those elements. And visually it had like, I listened to an interview or a podcast where the director was on there, and they talked about using a lot of zoom lenses and actually zooming in shots instead of like using like a dolly or pushing in that way.
Which is very much from the 70s a lot.
Yeah, because they said like in the 70s when those zoom lenses became prevalent, people used it a lot.
Yeah.
So it was like a visually interesting movie, and the music and all that stuff like hit the sweet spot. But to me, the character actions, it was those frustrating, head-shaking moments of like, why did you do this? Why didn't you do that? And I know that a lot of movies elicit that response. It's just in this movie, because I saw it with Julie, like she was sitting there like getting pissed off at it. And then, we're seeing it weeks later, so there wasn't that ton of people in the theater. But even other people in the theater had like audible reactions to those moments. And some of it was frustrating elements of person being pursued by someone with knife, standing on a road and the car stops, and then the person gets out of the car, and neither of them see the person walk 6 feet around and come up right behind them with the knife. Like, you would notice that. You would know that was what was happening. You should see that. And then someone's trying to start a car. And the entire movie, you've seen this pickup truck going around that's got a loud V8 motor that whenever they do anything, you hear like the engine rev and the exhaust and all that. So somebody's trying to start a car, no radio, nothing on. They're just in the car. That you see the headlights of the truck like a quarter mile down the road turn on, and the truck is coming towards this car, and the person in the car does not hear it until the very last second. It's like you've made a thing about how this truck is so loud, so they would hear it approaching, and then either start the car and push the gas or just get out of it. So there's just moments of things like that where characters had actions that just were like like just convenience for story points, and two, like, so I think that it's set pretty closely after the first movie, because like one of the characters still has like a flip phone, but like all the characters leave their phones behind during a certain scene, and it's before anything bad happens. So like I could see that maybe being the reaction, but my thing has always been like, if I'm in somewhere I've never been before and I'm going to go off by myself outside, I usually take my phone with me because I don't want to be caught with something and not be able to contact anyone. So there's just moments like that. A lot of things like that felt like it was less realistic plot development and more just a way to make the set pieces and continue the action. And
so the film wasn't fun enough to make up for all those, like, contrived and goofy elements, right? I mean, because sometimes a film has a bunch of dumb stuff like that. But if the presentation and style is fun enough, you're like, okay, that's fine. That's not the point. This was not as, the fun didn't make up for it, I guess.
No, because like the few set pieces they had with like the one at the pool was kind of cool. And then there was a few other ones, but those just didn't have enough, like you said, fun to it. Didn't have enough cat and mouse, didn't have enough going on, because like after this movie ended, like when I was talking to Julie afterwards, like, this one, like the text at the end was very like trying to go for that 80s feel, the music playing at the end, all this stuff. I was like, a movie that did the similar thing with leaned super heavy into the 80s John Carpenter stuff was The Guest. Mm-hmm. And to me, The Guest was a far more entertaining film that had a much better set piece at the end with like the stuff at the school. So it's just like the strange, like Prey at Night.
And you say when you said the zoom lenses and stuff too, and talking about the 70s, I was immediately thinking about The House of the Devil, how Ty West, how he nailed the feel of those films, you know what I mean, in a modern context. And that's what I think for me made that film so enjoyable. It had a distinct feel.
Yeah.
Well,
too, there was some editing that was kind of choppy because halfway through the movie, I'm like, wait, are there? So I think there's a male killer and 2 female killers. But at one point in the movie, it's like, are there 2 male killers? Because they were just on the other side of this place in a truck, and now they're just walking around. Mm-hmm. So I think there was some choppy editing where it didn't really lay out the timeline clearly of how much time had elapsed because a character was driving around in a truck and then soon after was just standing there like on the side of the road.
They could have cut out massive scenes or
so knows, yeah. So it was just to me for a minute there I was like, are there 2 guys and 2 girls like or what? And that was slightly confusing. And at the end, like, oh no, there's just 1 guy, but it just followed a lot of the standard slasher tropes. So to me, it would have, if this was released, sans cell phones, you could have released in the 80s, and just grimed it up a little bit and made it look like those movies do now, like, and it would have fit in just fine in the 80s and the slasher boom. But to me, like, it didn't really do enough with the element of like you're trapped in this big house or something. Mm-hmm. And the set pieces were visually interesting. They just didn't do enough to be super satisfying. And then you just had a character has a gun, and then they set the gun down, and then something happens and don't even try to find it. And then it's just like frustrating.
So if you're expecting, like in the context of it, if it was made in the 80s, it has a lot of kind of dumb moments and things where it fits in with those slasher films of that era. Yeah. But as far as today goes, it's not smart enough to be what you expect out of a modern slasher.
Yeah, they didn't do enough with the premise to really, to me, make it. I mean, like I said, it's not a terrible movie. Mm-hmm. Like to give it a score like out of 10, like 5, maybe 5.5. Like if you just want to watch it, and you like, my recommendation, we wait till it hits a streaming service or something.
If it does. Rental.
Or a rental,
it, yeah.
Because it's not like terrible. It's just a lot of frustrating slasher tropes with really not much else brought to the table and no commentary on anything. It was just kind of a straightforward sequel that was far more slasher than Home Invasion or anything like that. So,
yeah, I hadn't seen the other stuff the director had done really.
We did that movie, the Mandy Moore one, like 47 Meters Down or something. Yeah. I think.
Is he doing a sequel to that? I think it said something about 40. Okay, no, that is 2017, and 48 Meters Down in 2019.
Yeah.
So yeah, he's done several things, but seems to be mid to very low budget stuff, maybe.
Yeah, and
fairly low budget.
And The Strangers Prey at Night was shot partially, or it was shot in Kentucky, I believe, because the beginning of it is set on the Kentucky side, northern Kentucky side by Cincinnati. And let's see, because it was shot in Cincinnati, Ohio, Maysville, Kentucky, and Covington, Kentucky. So all up kind of northern Kentucky, Cincinnati. So relatively cool that it was shot like a local area.
So Lee Roberts, is that
yes.
who Julie knows? Because I saw her image on Instagram. I recognized her. So yeah. I don't know if I've seen her in groups or she's added me on Facebook or what, but yeah, she looks familiar.
Yeah, because I think she was in Girl Number 3, that movie that Julie was in years ago. So, movies that get shot locally, that's all going to end, though, because Kentucky ended their tax incentive credit for filmmaking.
Yeah,
so.
They said 4 now, so there's a lot of
the stuff that
cuts.
Stuff that was already because stuff that was already approved, like, will continue to move on and receive the tax credit, but anything that has been approved will likely not, and will go somewhere else most likely. Yeah. But so I watched that. I did finish the X-Files season 11, which Jake
texted us, I guess, about the second to last episode. I didn't respond. I barely read it because I'm not caught up yet. So
his was about the one that had like the surgeons and stuff.
Was that the second to last episode?
Like
he said something about pancreas.
Yeah. So did you
I think I saw the synopsis for that. I don't think I've seen that one.
So pretty much this season, they did the opening episode that was kind of retconning all of the mythology stuff from the prior season finale. And then they had a bunch of kind of Monster of the Week episodes. And then they had like one episode in the middle there that had to do with their son. And then they had some other Monster of the Week episodes. And then the end, like they had one episode that kind of wrapped all the mythology stuff back up. And the ending to me was better than the season 10 finale, which I thought was just really atrocious. But I had the exact same feeling watching both of them in terms of this is supposed to wrap this up and they haven't made that much progress and there's 19 minutes left. How are they possibly going to wrap this up? And then this one did the same thing where it felt like the finale was just kind of rushed and they left one character's fate incredibly ambiguous. You don't know if they're alive or dead or just seriously injured. Mm-hmm. And then the ending they leave with is like bang, bang, bang. And then you have main character, like a main villain or character go out. And then you see, well, without spoiling all of it, like just the ending to me, it was better than the prior season 10 finale, but it still wasn't very satisfying and just left me like,
I saw David Duchovny posting on Instagram like, hey, the cliffiest of cliffhangers. And I was like, oh, great. That's exactly what we wanted.
So
like another one that could be retconned if they did another. And
well, this one,
Gillian Anderson, she said she's done with Scully for now, right?
She did. So, and this one too, like it's not as much of a cliffhanger as the prior one because if they just never make another one, there is an end point for this.
Okay, well that's something then.
But there is like if they were to do another season, they do have enough threads of storylines to check in on the whereabouts of a couple characters and to continue things. It's just
I don't even know what I want because originally I thought, oh, they can do a movie and wrap it up with the last one.
Yeah.
But now at this point, it's like a lot of the mythology episodes, they're totally, I'm okay with them, but that's not my favorite thing out of the season. Well, so it's like, actually, maybe I just want another season to get some of these, lesser episodes.
Yeah.
Just to give a reason to give me some good X-Files.
Well, the main problem I think the show had is the mythology episodes, even in the series itself, got pretty muddled later on in the series run. Because there were different points, like they thought that maybe the movie would be the last thing, and then they'd have a season. Then there'd be a season after the movie, and then it continued on. So it just kind of got muddled. Like personally, I think the better method would have been for the season 10 to open up with, oh well, we've screwed the plan up so much, and we're so dysfunctional. The aliens have kind of given up on their plans of colonizing Earth because they think we're a lost cause. So they just moved on. Do you want to join you want to go back on the FBI and do some investigations because you have experience with this stuff, and then just do kind of disconnected episodes and do like 6 a season, like Black Mirror or something.
Yeah.
And then just let the non Chris Carter directors and writers do the episodes.
Well, it's like maybe it's just what they want to do, but it's like this show doesn't need a through line thread on these mythology episodes to survive and I think hold an audience. It just needs good episodes. You know what I mean? Like it can be that thing. Like each one can be like its own little story.
Because I seriously doubt, because like Twin Peaks, there was 2 original seasons and then the return, and then the return was not trying to be the original series whatsoever. But something I think that people pointed out is maybe that with the new X-Files runs, that the writing and a lot of that hasn't changed that much from the original series run, but the directing styles have changed and taste have changed, so that a lot of the stuff doesn't work like it did 15 years ago.
Or the ideas aren't as mind-blowing. You know what I mean? The concepts aren't as new and fresh.
Yeah, because in
as far as who they're coming from.
Because when the X-Files came out, there wasn't as much on TV that was kind of just like out there mainstream entertainment. I mean, there was definitely entertainment because there's Tales from the Crypt and a bunch of stuff, but there wasn't as much. And now you have so many shows that are so out there, and you have the Sci-Fi Network and all these different channels. So it's in Netflix original series. So it's not as groundbreaking to have sci-fi content aimed at a major audience. So I just think that the writers, and then what's funny is some of the episodes I like the most out of these 2 runs, a lot of hardcore fans do not like. Because my favorite episodes were the Darren Morgan episodes for like Mulder and Scully meet the Were Monster from season 10, And then this season, the Lost Art of Forehead Sweat.
Yeah, that's so good.
So those are episodes that are just kind of meta, where he's kind of aware of what the show is, what the characters are, and playing with the situations. And to me, that's where what works in today's world, but taking it super earnest and super serious doesn't work as much when there's so much more ridiculous stuff in real life. And it just feels like, to me, I think the show should end where it did. Or if anything, because I don't really care about the mythology. I only care about really seeing these characters interact.
Yeah.
And like their son was a jerk and not really that compelling so far. So it just feels like I think it's a good point to leave it. Without Gillian Anderson, they shouldn't do it. And we'll see what happens. But yeah, like with Twin Peaks: The Return, it just felt like they said for season 3, we're just doing this thing. We're taking these constructs and these characters and things you're aware of and doing something completely different. This is what we've wanted to do. And the X-Files feels more like they're trying to recreate what the original series was, just, 16 years after it ended.
And yeah, there's not a singular, genius visionary behind. And I'm not saying there's a singular behind Twin Peaks. It's Mark Frost and David Lynch, but there's not somebody there that I think has a strong enough vision to let X-Files be something that different. You know what I mean?
Well,
I feel like the network, everybody's like, hey, let's, I don't think they would even think about playing it too wild.
Twin Peaks, you had the show and you had like the new season, you had those books that Mark Frost wrote that kind of said, okay, here's connective tissue, here's all, here's crossing the T's and dotting the I's and telling you exactly what happened in that final book. The X-Files does not feel as if there was that level of care put into connecting it to the original series story and then wrapping it up in and of itself.
And Mark Frost's book, not to say it's throwaway, but it is not essential to enjoying the story at all. Like, that stuff is all there if you want it. It has been thought about deeply, but
it's not.
It doesn't even need to be there to make the show be satisfying. You know what I mean? Like it's not a crux that the show has to lean on. Mythology. Some people love lore and mythology. For me, I like the experience and, but also too, I don't want it to seem like it is incoherent and just thrown together. So I really that's what I like about Twin Peaks, is that there is something behind the scenes, even though all is not revealed.
See, and then other things I watched, Ash vs. Evil Dead season 3. I've watched episodes 1 through 4 because I downloaded the Stars app and got like a week trial.
Yeah, I can't remember if I've only watched 2 episodes or 3.
So yeah, so
what do you think so far?
So far I'm enjoying it. I mean, to me, the show, like as we mentioned before, I think Derek was more down on like the shorter run times. To me, I think that a lot of times they just don't have to do a lot of filler and have like these B plots that don't matter. Like season 3 is fine. Like it's fun. It's good. It's good to see Bruce Campbell back. The things they're doing, they, I guess, try not to tread water and do the exact same story again and go back to the cabin and do the Evil Dead over again, because the first season went to the cabin, second season went to the cabin. Like it seems like they might be trying to do something different. So far, like I'm enjoying it and seeing more of the town, and the big plot point is Ash has a daughter. And
is that working for you so far?
I mean, so far they haven't spent as much time on it because he's literally maybe talked to her for like 3 minutes, like in terms of actually discussing things.
Okay, because I think where I left off, it seemed like she was going to be a bigger part. You know what I mean? Like,
I mean, I'm sure
they were
will
in
be.
a house together. He was going to drive her to school or whatever.
Yeah,
like that's the parts that I saw.
Yeah,
and then I don't think I've watched since then. So
yeah, I mean, so they've gone
backed off a little bit.
They've gone like I'm enjoying it, and there's like a set piece that took place at a certain type of clinic that was very entertaining, and like so there's a lot of stuff that went on that I enjoyed. There's like a thing at a school with like a mascot. So there's a lot of stuff that's happened that they're trying not to just repeat the exact same gags from everything else. And I'm enjoying it. It's just, I think that like the ratings for the season 3 have been down. And I think it's just because Starz released it instead of in like October like they had been. They released it 6 months later than they had in previous years. Didn't put much promotion behind it, and expected people just to come back to it.
Yeah, they kind of killed the momentum that show had, I think.
Yeah, but
in some ways.
And then it's on the same night as The Walking Dead, but I mean, I don't think that hurt it before, but
No.
I think at this point it's just releasing it like in February. It's a horror show, so I think people are a lot more geared up for that in October than they are in, and even though the show didn't end in October, it started in October, so people start watching it when they're in that mood for horror content or, gore and things like that, and then just continue with it. As opposed to starting in February, people are just like, that's, it's kind of not top of mind.
It's really going to be just the diehard fans, at this point.
So hopefully,
there's so much other stuff vying for people's time.
Like hopefully enough people will continue watching it via the stars and get the app and stuff, that it'll get another season, because I think Bruce Campbell said, like, without continuing seasons, there wouldn't be a movie, because if you can't have enough interest for the show, how's there enough interest for the movie?
Yeah, he said something like, if the show fails, it'll probably be the end of Ash forever.
Yeah, so like hopefully they continue to do something with the show and it can get the ratings up. But like I'm enjoying it so far, and if you like season 1 and 2, you should definitely watch season 3.
From what I watched, it was not a drop off. They kept up the energy and everything.
Yeah, it didn't look like it wasn't like a chopped budget where they're in like a bunch of bottle episodes in one location. Yeah. So it's continuing to up the ante. So if you enjoyed season 1 and 2, make sure you watch season 3. But that was all the stuff that I watched.
Yeah, I'll keep my stuff kind of light because I know we got to get into the movie. I watched I, Tonya.
Yeah, I saw that as well.
That was good. Yeah, I liked it. We didn't love it. Wasn't like a knockout, but there was some stuff that was about it. But I like I can't think of her name now.
Margot Robbie.
Yeah, I think I really enjoy watching.
It's definitely too, put a warning ahead of, if somebody's experienced domestic abuse in their life, that movie could be rough to watch.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Which is something about that story I didn't realize until I watched the movie, how that story went. So,
and there's criticism about the film too from some journalists that were around at the time, saying, "Hey, this paints her in a less innocent light," or whatever. But the whole film's conceit is that this is all coming from perspectives of people involved in the story. Yeah. So everybody is an unreliable narrator in some regards.
And they're all flawed human beings. Yes. And here's the world they existed in, and the biases that existed, and the situation that created this entire thing.
Yeah. And I think there could have been more to said about the environments people are grown up into, and what that, the effects of that, and maybe the disadvantages people may have because they are raised a certain way. And I'm not talking even about class. It's even if she did not have a lot of money at all, but it's not even that. It's maybe the way her mother treated her in some respects, you know what I mean, that caused her to make bad decisions later in life, so there's a lot to be said, but some of it just felt like it almost felt like I don't want to make it seem this, because it is well crafted in many regards. I don't want to diminish its value at all, but it almost seems like gossip porn in some regards. Yeah. For people that were involved in that story. Yeah. This seems like it's not really achieving anything. It's not really elevating the story like The Social Network. You know what I mean? That was more about many more things besides just how Facebook was invented. It's about a lot of. It's a lot of. About a lot of different things. In American culture and all kinds of stuff. I, Tonya, it almost starts touching on some of those bigger issues, but really it just feels like, hey, are you into the, Tonya Harding story? Yeah. Here's a thing that shows the perspectives on these people. And that's I feel like it's a little bit more surface level than I was hoping for and expecting. Yeah. And it's weird to be entertaining and then also see, the domestic, abuse and everything. And
the way that was treated in that time period.
Yeah, and it's set to fun 80s music. Yeah. Some of those scenes kick off, and it's like, this is a weird presentation of her getting hit in the face. You know what I mean? Yeah. A lot of times it is for, I'm sure, what some couples fight about sometimes. It's small things, you know what I mean? This isn't some big fight where somebody was cheating on somebody. It's hey, I'm complaining about the type of ice cream, you know what I mean, you got or something. It's kind of brutal in some respects. And my wife also was off put by the CGI and everything of the ice skating scenes.
Well, yeah, because it was one of those things when you're watching it in theaters. Did you watch it at home or in theater?
Home.
So in the theater, I didn't notice as much going on. It seemed like I could tell, okay, Margot Robbie's literally not a world-class figure skater, so she's not doing all this stuff. But probably at home, it's probably easier.
I could see a little bit of face tracking for sure. But then the back, she was like, something looks weird, and it was the backgrounds. It's empty audience, and they fill everything in. So I watched all the behind-the-scenes stuff. That was pretty cool. But I also did like the kinetic feel of the camera when the ice skating stuff. My wife didn't like the way that was shot, but there was some stuff I liked about it for sure. But it wasn't a knockout. And then I watched Jumanji. Welcome to the Jungle. much lighter film. But I have to say, like, we both like, I heard good buzz about that.
Yeah.
I like Kevin Hart and The Rock and Jack Black, and I had not watched the other person. I guess that was in
Karen
Doctor
Gillan.
Who.
Yeah, she was Karen Gillan. So she was Nebula in the Guardians of the Galaxy, and she's been in other stuff.
Yeah. But I really enjoy that. But it is what it is. It was a good update to that
PG-13 family fun.
Yeah. But it was like really funny, and if you like Kevin Hart and The Rock and Jack Black was very good. Like, I like the whole like role reversal of him. Essentially these kids go into a video game, and he's like this. It's like 17-year-old
attractive girl that's popular.
Yeah, who is, obsessed with her phone and herself and everything, or seemingly obsessed with herself. So the other thing that was kind of cool about it was, it wasn't at this level, but it had a Breakfast Club vibe where these people a little bit from different backgrounds, or not necessarily backgrounds, but they are different, I guess.
Stations in life,
or cliques. They all kind of, you know what I mean? Like, by the end of it, they're like, oh, hey, we are
here's
closer.
common ground.
Yes, like it wasn't like heavy-handed. It wasn't too hard, but I think that film was really well handled for what it was.
Yeah.
And it was like really fun and funny. So I definitely recommend just like a rental on that if you are at all interested. But that seems like something that'll come to HBO. Like, that seemed like definitely like an HBO film when I saw it.
It runs 24 hours a day.
Yeah. So I recommend checking that out, though, if you were into them.
Yeah.
And then I watched Deep Red again. I'd seen that a long time ago. Not a lot of people, some people I've seen talk about being their favorite Argento film. But I like that film a lot, and I hadn't seen an HD version of it. So recently I've been watching a lot of films that I had watched years ago on DVD, and now watching an HD, and I'm like, oh man, this looks really good. So yeah, I mean, maybe we'll cover that one day. So I won't touch on a lot.
We need to cover some more Argento.
But that is a giallo film. Suspiria is something else.
Yeah. Giallo trappings, but a different story.
Yeah. So, but it is a straight giallo film, and I super enjoy that movie. Yeah. So we can kind of move on. I watched some other stuff, and we'll save that for next week, I guess.
So now we'll talk about The Descent, the movie that's from 2005, according to IMDb. Although it was originally a British release and then came to the U.S. And I guess, too, so you watched the one on Netflix, right? Mm-hmm. So we watched the versions on Netflix. So there are different versions have different endings because it was different cuts. Because I had seen the original cut... When I watched the first time, it was the British cut, which had a different ending than the U.S. cut.
So this is full spoilers, too.
Yeah, full spoilers throughout. It's on Netflix. You can go watch it now.
Okay, after you do the synopsis, let me know that different ending, because I watched it on DVD when it came out. Was that the British ending? Or was that the American Netflix ending?
So the American Netflix version, the British version had like an extra 30 seconds that completely changed the ending. So
was it like a fake out?
Yeah, so the, like you said, full spoilers, the basic synopsis is a caving expedition goes horribly wrong as the explorers become trapped and ultimately pursued by a strange breed of predators. So a group goes out, cave diving or whatever, runs into humanoid creatures that live underground that then stalk and try to kill them throughout the thing.
Nosferatu looking creatures.
Yeah, they do look like some Nosferatu type creatures.
And I don't. Did you play the Uncharted games?
Some of them, but
I don't know if it was part 2. One of them, like those games, minor spoilers for those games. Some of those towards the end, like it's like typical Indiana Jones stuff, and then all of a sudden, like the last couple of levels, things take a supernatural turn sometimes.
Yeah,
and one of those, the supernatural turn, like all the enemies, like you're in some cave, like dark places, and like all the creatures look like those. From there, I'm sure they, I'm not saying they necessarily pulled it from that, but it has that sort of vibe. But those are some cool looking creatures, and I think if they would have failed on the creature design on those, this film could have fallen apart.
Yeah, so the movie is directed by Neil Marshall, who has also directed so movies he did around that time period. So he did Dog Soldiers before that. Then he did the movie Doomsday and Centurion. But then since then, he's directed episodes of Hannibal, Westworld, Game of Thrones. He directed a segment in Tales of Halloween. the show Black Sail. So he's went to TV after movies.
His Tales of Halloween segment was the best. He's done some really good episodes of Game of Thrones.
Yeah, because he did
do like the Wall one.
Yeah, the Watchers on the Wall or whatever.
Yeah, which was like some better, like as good as battle scenes as compared to like Lord of the Rings. I thought like that episode was like, all right, this holds its own against Lord of the Rings. Like it is very, very good.
Yeah, so he's done a lot of big TV, which I think is probably a pretty lucrative gig. It doesn't tie up as much of your time. But yeah, like
so did you check out Dog Soldiers or?
No, I've not seen Dog Soldiers.
I watched that after the fact. I liked it. It's pretty cool. Maybe we'll cover that one day. It's not as intense, I don't think, as The Descent.
Yeah.
And then I watched Doomsday too. I didn't see The Descent in theaters. I heard good things about it. Came out and I rented it. And then I was like on board with him. So then when Doomsday came out, I was like, oh, he's basically making an Escape from New York / Mad Max film,
Yeah.
And I like that film for what it was. It was goofy fun, but I enjoyed that movie.
Yeah, I did. I remember the trailer for Doomsday.
I mean, I was at that time too. There was no, post-apocalyptic films like that of that style, and I was like, oh, great! I love Mad Max.
Yeah,
the guy who did The Descent is doing his own version of Mad Max. It's Mad Max meets Escape from New York because I think London or whatever is quarantined off.
Yeah,
and who is it? Rana Mitra maybe?
Let's see.
Look that up for me real quick since you're on there.
Yeah, Rona Mitra.
Yeah. Who I think used to be a Tomb Raider model, which they make a Tomb Raider reference in The Descent as well. She's basically Snake Plissken. It has to go in there because of some cure for some virus or something. I can't remember what it is. But then it's also like all Mad Maxed out. That is a fun, goofy movie. I'm not going to say it's stellar, but it is what it is. I've liked his output a lot. And he's doing Hellboy now, and I'm pretty excited for that.
Yeah. I mean, so
based on him alone. Yeah,
so the basic, like I said, full spoilers, the basic idea is early on in the movie, the character Sarah and her friends are going on a whitewater rafting trip, and her husband and her kid come to pick her up, and you get like a weird vibe between her husband and her friend Juno.
Yeah, taking off the helmet and stuff.
Like being very tender and stuff, and being upset at his wife because she knocked Juno off the boat or whatever, or their raft. And then they elope in their car, and as they're driving, they get into a car accident that kills Sarah's husband and child. So after the fact, a year later,
Yeah.
Because I was confusing that with the ritual, because the ritual is 6 months.
Yeah, I think it's a year later.
So it's a year later, the friends all decide to go on a vacation to do some cave diving and take Sarah just to help her get her mind off of what happened with her husband and kid.
And they're in North Carolina?
Yeah,
it's supposed to be
in the U.S.
Yeah, the license plate said North Carolina, and they said it's supposed to be Chattanooga, I think. But they
somewhere in the American South.
But they call it Choga, it's a fake name, but it's supposed to be Chattanooga. I think.
Basically just the American South.
Yeah,
they're gonna go do a cave dive, and they go to the cave after all the friends reunite and are introduced to Juno's friend, her new friend Holly, and they go to the cave and get in there, and then as they go in, you realize that what Juno has done is not taken them into the charted cave system, which is relatively safe for tourists, but taken them into an uncharted cave system so they can name it and do it as a group bonding experience. But there's a reason that it's not charted, because no one's been through it and lived and escaped.
And really, I think I was looking at something on IMDb, and it was hey, none of those creatures really show up for 45 minutes or 15 minutes.
Yeah, it takes a while into the movie.
But honestly, the first half is almost more harrowing, just the survival aspects and the claustrophobia.
Yeah, stuck in a narrow cave.
Yeah, my wife does not. She watched this back when we watched it, and she watched a little bit this time. She was in and out, but she doesn't. She's like, this movie is awesome, but I don't want to watch it. Yeah. I don't like the movie because it is so intense.
Quarters.
Yeah, it's so intense. And I think, and I'm not claustrophobic, but this movie has made me think, hell no, I'm not doing that shit ever.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? I will go on a guided tour with a tour guide on some baby track
Mammoth
one.
Cave.
Yeah, some baby one we're spelunking, but I would not go on one intense like this. I would not start out doing that because this does for spelunking what Jaws did for the ocean, I think.
Because you have a scene where Sarah kind of gets stuck as they're going through a very narrow section, and then they hear like the cave start to shift a little bit, so they have to get out before they get crushed to death. And it's just, to me, like being stuck in an underground dark place where there's no light, and you're just, if you were to get pinned and stuck and just die of starvation, that's like a terrible,
that does
terrible
not
way
sound
to die.
fun at all. And I, again, like most horror films are like, whatever, they don't scare me. This is, I think, probably one of the scariest and most intense horror films of the recent era.
And this is one where I would rather just die than be left to suffer and die of like dehydration, starvation over the course of days.
So somebody gets their leg broke, you know, and I told my wife, I said, at that point, just slit my throat because I'm not getting out. You know what I mean? Like, there's no way somebody's going to get down there. I was like, just slit my throat and go on. Yeah. Like, that's the exact feeling of the, you know, a bit like Alien too, like that isolation, the almost like no hope. If things go bad, there is no hope. And, you know, most horror films, a lot of them, you know, they just get their kicks on people getting chased around again at a campsite. Like, that's scary for a couple seconds, but there's just something about being trapped, I think, that is a basic natural instinct and fear that, you know, an innate animalistic fear that people have. Like, we would like scramble like a wild animal trying to get out.
Well, like watching The Descent, just like sitting there watching it like in a living room on a TV, it did make me like tense up a little bit when they're getting like and stuck in the narrow cave part. And then I think like was it the recent Blair Witch had a segment kind of like that, of like people almost getting stuck or crawling through something.
Yeah, was it like in the walls or something? Or,
it was like a tunnel. So like stuff like that, to me, when done effectively, can make you like go, ugh. And two, the movie was mostly shot on a soundstage, I believe. Like they shot like a very small amount like on location somewhere, and then shot the rest on the soundstage because it was too dangerous to shoot it.
That's what. As soon as I got back in the cave, because I wasn't thinking about this back when I watched it, you know, in the mid 2000s, but this time, as soon as I got in the caves, I thought it would be impossible. It would be so, nearly impossible. It was so hard to shoot this down there with all that equipment and everything.
So dangerous.
Yeah. And to the, I mean, just the cinematography in the caves, everything is lit like, it's not completely naturalistic, but it has a style to it, but it doesn't draw attention to itself. You know, like you feel like you were down there, but then again, that's not how it really looked. Like, I think this film is beautifully shot and just everything about it feels very naturalistic, and that keeps you in the moment. And then especially when it takes that turn, like from dusk till dawn, when all of a sudden these creatures pop up, like that is just more impactful because it has felt grounded throughout the entire film.
Yeah, because the movie does have like they have those little glow stick lights, and they do illuminate the cave far more than that would in real life.
Which apparently on the IMDb trivia said they bought those at a sex shop. Not the characters, I assume the prop department.
But yeah, so I mean, there's like small things like that, but it never drew attention to itself because a cave would naturally be a very dark location. And the movie wasn't too dark. Because I've seen some like independent movies where it's just like, this is too dark. I can't see anything. And it's not by design. It's by the fact they just didn't throw enough light on the set. So in this movie, it never drew attention to itself. And this was 2005, so this was still when people were shooting on film. So it was a little bit different scenario.
I love the texture of the film, just everything about it.
Well, there's like early on, there's not drone shots, there's helicopter shots when like driving through the woods. And Julie was like, oh, this is kind of janky compared to now because it's literally somebody holding a camera in a helicopter, so it's kind of shaky. Yeah. And we're used to now all the drone shots being like buttery smooth and having gimbals. Yeah, I'm sure
the budget wasn't too large. You know, even if they used a gimbal, could have been an older one.
Well, they probably flew over just a handful of times.
And the other thing though is the bats that fly at the beginning. That CGI looks pretty dodgy. That's the only thing.
when the bats flew out, I was like, oh, this is CGI from 2005.
And when I watched this on DVD in that era, on a SD TV, it didn't seem like anything. It was like, oh yeah, those are bats. But now when you're watching on a bigger screen, HD.
Computer animation stuff that wasn't composited or animated super well from like 10, 15 years ago does really stick out like a sore thumb on HD, and I would assume especially on 4K transfers, because like that Hugh Jackman Van Helsing movie, I couldn't imagine what that looks like on a 4K transfer in the negative sense, because that CG was back then just kind of like, ugh.
Yeah, I think I heard Lord of the Rings maybe doesn't hold up as well in HD.
Yeah.
I'm want to revisit that, but I'm curious to see how that's
because like the Hobbit, like the newer one, like they shot it in 4K in like 60, or maybe they shot in HD. I don't know. They shot it in 60 or 48 frames.
I think too, like some of the makeup apparently in HD, they said, and sets look a lot faker now.
Yeah.
So maybe you just watch that on the tube TV or your phone.
Yeah. So there's some stuff that doesn't benefit from modern viewing technology as much, but
the rest of the film looks great in HD.
Yeah. I mean that's just a small thing.
Yeah.
But yeah, so the movie, like all the interdynamics, between the characters are great, and that's really what drives attention and getting stuck in the cave. And all of that is terrifying enough, and the sense of dread that you mentioned that kind of comes over when they realize they're not on the plotted out, mapped out cave system. They're in a new one. And then they see...
And they lost some of their roping supplies and everything.
They lost some of their supplies, and then they find equipment in the cave that looks like it's from divers or cave explorers like 100 years prior. And the fact that they see that equipment and know that it's not named means those cave explorers did not get out.
Yeah.
So they have this element just like looming dread because they know it's not likely they're going to get out, and they don't really know what the path is. And then you have the element of the girl, Holly, like breaks her leg. So she's kind of just a drag on the group. And then the movie, once it does that shift, and it's kind of like From Dusk Till Dawn, in that when the cave dwelling creatures show up, it very heavily shifts to that immediately. And a lot of characters get offed in the course of like 10 minutes. And then you kind of like find out like who your leads are and what's going to happen, because Sarah's kind of a lead because she's the one that has the traumatic experience from her past, and she's when she like falls down and like falls somewhere and kind of passes out or blacks out or whatever, and you see the rest of the group going on, you knew she's going to come back into play. And her character like has to, in the kind of pit where all the blood and bones are, which very cool visual, not super realistic that would exist, but the visual of that was very cool. Like when she
it heavily veers into genre territory once that turn occurs.
Yeah,
I don't think it's fine. It works, but yeah, it's like watching again. I'm almost like maybe the first part of the film is actually the strongest part.
Well, yeah, because something that I realized watching it again is like the second part when they're getting ready for battle or whatever. Like somebody has like kind of a tight shot, kind of like a Sam Raimi-esque shot with like one of the picks they use of like putting it into like a holster on their side or something. So like it's like a tight shot that's kind of similar like to Ash like getting geared up when he's going to do stuff in Evil Dead 2 or Army of Darkness. And it's like, to me, that's kind of too genre heavy and too goofy of like a character. Like they didn't swivel it on their finger and like put it in a holster and say like, "Come on, you cave sucking pieces." Like they didn't do that. But to me, it almost ungrounded the movie some to have the kind of moment that felt like more like it could be an Evil Dead than this.
And really, though, looking at his filmography, like before and after this, as far as Doomsday and Dog Soldiers, that's like him being restrained. Like this film is like the first part is super restrained. Second part is kind of veering out there a little bit. And then Doomsday is just over the moon genre heavy. So yeah, it definitely takes a turn, and I could see it maybe turning off some people, but I feel like at that point you're in the movie so much that it will be hard to be turned off too much, unless you absolutely were somebody who did not like creatures because you thought they were ridiculous.
Well, then like when Sarah is down in kind of like the pit and has to fight off like the child cave dweller, then like its mother, like she just kind of snaps mentally at that point. And she had found her friend Rebecca, the character Juno, accidentally stabbed in the neck with the pick. And the thing with like Juno stabbing the other girl accidentally with the pick, like you can't really fault her for that too much, because she just got out of a tense situation. What you can fault her for is not making sure that her friend was just fully dead or trying to take her with her, not doing either of those things and just leaving her there and moving on.
And then just not really saying an accident happened is, you know what I mean? Like I understand the stressful situation, but that's also one of those like, okay, some bad decisions were made here where things wouldn't transpire the same way, in horror films, but they ride that line just enough, I think. Like kind of it's a little piecemeal, because she has the necklace and stuff like that. So
Yeah, so the other thing is like, so would Sarah's husband give his side piece a necklace that was like a saying that his wife would recognize if she ever saw it? That seems a bit brazen.
Yeah.
Or the fact that her friend, knowing that she would know about it, would wear it.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
But you had like those, and then like the friends apparently knew about it and nobody told Sarah.
Yeah.
Which I mean, that's probably happens in real life. People know things and don't tell their friend. But like the inner dynamics between the characters, kind of at that point, it's kind of trying to remember who's who. Mm-hmm. Because aside from like your main characters like Sarah and Juno, the rest of them are kind of like who? No,
and they're sometimes wearing helmets covered in grime now in the dark. You know.
Yeah, so you know that there's like two characters that are sisters, and just to me rewatching it, like the first half is very tension filled and kind of builds a sense of dread, and then the second half when it kind of has that genre twist, then it kind of lessens the impact of it. Because there's some stuff like when one of the characters, one of the sisters is like locked into like one of the climbing things and like trying to climb across the chasm between two things, and like one of the creatures is climbing on the wall and like slits her throat. Like that's all kind of edited in a way. It's hard to tell exactly what happened, and there's really no tension to it because just it all kind of happens.
That's the thing where I almost feel like there could have been more of a. I mean, there was a shift because I guess it would. Maybe it keeps the film a little fresher, but you know, when the monster stuff starts happening or the creatures, I almost feel like, hey, if they would have mixed that in with more of the elements of being trapped and having to get to these at that point, it almost feels like the cave navigating is not that big of a deal anymore. You know, they're just kind of running around a little bit. Yeah, and I get that. Like it's, you know, there was a lot to balance there, but that I almost feel like they could have heightened it a little bit more. Yeah. Like they do that climbing sequence that is really good. Yeah. But like you said, not maybe totally clear on what's happening sometimes. But I almost feel like they could have heightened it by like, hey, not only are they now trying to navigate and survive, there's also this threat here. When instead it almost just feels like the threat replaced the navigation and stuff like that, you know? Yeah,
so you have like the kind of dash towards the end of them just trying to escape and, you know, fighting back or trying to hide. And obviously it's not going to work too well. And then like the creature design for the cave dwellers was really good because it didn't look overly fake. And I think keeping the characters mostly silhouetted in darkness or in the one moment using like the night vision camera to show them, that was an effective way to show it without overshowing it and making it look goofy, because most times any character that if you just have in bright light walking around normal will look kind of goofy regardless of how well the effect is done. Mm-hmm. And shooting it the way they did still kept them scary or mysterious. Now I'm sure there's some people that just could not connect with the character at all and would probably just be turned off by it, but that's like probably a small minority. But the monsters themselves are effective, but I still think that the scariest thing was just the location and the sense of dread of being stuck in this underground place and never escaping.
Yeah. Again, I feel like it, you know, it elevated that activity. Yeah. You know what I mean? It took that already activity that could be a little scary for some people and then just heightened it and like really pulled it for everything it's worth. Yeah. And milked it, you know, again, like Jaws with
milked
the ocean.
Like a little cow.
Yeah. Like they took this thing that's could be horrifying and really worked it. And then also had a little genre twist there at the end. Yeah. Like, I think this film was so effectively done.
Yeah. So you have the stuff like that. And then like I know I mentioned before, like the ending. So you have all the characters kind of get pared down to just Juno and just Sarah, and they kind of go on a little tirade fight against the creatures and kill a bunch of them. And then Sarah injures Juno so that she'll get stuck behind and she can escape because she knew that she left her friend to die, and she knew that she was cheating with her husband and indirectly caused the death of her husband and child. Probably her child was the one she's more upset about than the husband, far more, because, you know, he cheated. So
yeah.
So you have all those elements.
Die, you son of a bitch.
Yeah, and like her kid was the one that she would like throughout the cave trip, like thought she hurt her child and stuff like that. So then, you know, she stabs her in the leg and then she climbs to safety and escapes. Now the difference between the U.S. and the British ending, and the U.S. ending and the one that's on Netflix now, she gets out of the cave system, gets to her car, drives away, stops, and then like sees the ghost of Juno, I guess, like haunting her. In the British version, she wakes back, like after all that, she wakes back up in the cave like when she's escaping, she falls down and then she wakes back up and climbs out. In the British version, and I guess or the overseas version, she wakes back up in the cave there, and there's no way out, and that's how it ends. And you can see like the group of like cave dwellers are coming closer to where she's at, or she can hear them in the distance.
This one might have had something where she saw her daughter across from her in the fire, I think. Too. I just pulled this up on YouTube here. She's got the birthday cake that they kind of show in the opening scene. I also read that there was a fan theory that the cave dwellers were all figments of her imagination, and she went crazy and killed all of her friends.
Yeah.
And they said something about a scene was removed. The director, Neil Marshall, confirmed that was something I think they were thinking about, but they removed a scene that supported that.
Yeah.
I don't know if, like this scene right here, I don't see any cave dwellers unless I'm just...
Or I think you hear them in the distance or something.
Okay, maybe.
Basically, you just know that she's stuck in there and not getting out. As opposed to the more optimistic ending of she got out of the cave. But then I think, like, I haven't watched The Descent 2, but there is a sequel. Okay. Yeah, so you can hear the cave dwellers coming towards us. So basically, you know, she's still in the cave. She didn't get out, and they're closing in.
Yeah, and they said before the sequel came out, that was a fan theory, and he confirmed it like before, like, hey, that's something we were playing with, and there was a scene that supported that it was all a figment of her imagination, and she just went crazy.
Yeah.
In the cave and killed her friends, but then they made a sequel that I guess deflated that. But that's a cool thing too that they had thought about that. I have not seen the sequel.
Yeah, I did not see the sequel. So the synopsis for the sequel is, according to IMDb, distraught, confused, and half wild with fear, Sarah Carter emerges alone from the Appalachian cave system where she encountered unspeakable terrors. Unable to plausibly explain to the authorities what happened or why she's covered in her friend's blood, she is forced back to the subterranean depths to help locate her 5 missing companions. As the rescue party dives deeper into uncharted caverns, nightmarish visions of the recent past begin to haunt Sarah as she starts to realize the full horror and futility of the mission. Subjected to the suspicion and mistrust of the group and confronted once more by the inbred, feral, and savagely ruthless crawlers, Sarah must draw on all of her inner reserves of strength and courage in a desperate final struggle for deliverance and redemption. So
I didn't know it was a direct sequel. It's like Aliens, basically.
Yeah, it's basically Aliens.
It's like, hey, no, this thing, we don't want to go there. And they're like, hey, no, we're going to go there.
Yeah, so, yeah. The ending is that she did get out, but the original ending was the more bleak, she was trapped and everybody died ending. So I'm not sure which one I prefer more. That was just the one I remember originally seeing, was where she was still in the cave.
I think I saw the one where she got out. Or I guess it is the fake out thing. I can't remember. Because I also could have possibly rented it from Otta Woolly, which had the, they have the British version or the, foreign versions, region releases and stuff. But I kind of remember that, but I don't remember that birthday cake. Really.
Yeah, I forgot about I just remember she was in the cave and you could hear the crawlers or whatever approaching.
I wonder if it was on the DVD release.
I'm trying to remember.
If it was like a special feature or something.
I'm trying to remember where I even watched the version from that I had, but I saw it back when it came out, like 2006 or so.
But anyway, this film I think is stellar. Like it's still to this day when I think, what's like one of the best modern horror films, at the top of my list of like post 2000. Yeah. This is up there for me. This is absolutely my top 10.
Well, like
maybe top 5 as far as being scary.
Like rewatching this now. So like getting into discussing like the ratings we give it out of 10. Like to me, I think that the first half is a great setup and a terrifying setup for a film and puts you in like a situation where you just feel like despair for the characters. I think that in the second half, once the shift happens and they're being attacked by the creatures, that it goes a little genre heavy to me and loses a little bit of the impact because you have, like I said, just like the character like looks like they're arming up with like their picks and stuff. To me,
a lot of hero moments and hero shots and stuff like that.
I feel like that. I mean, that works more in something like for instance, like Evil Dead 2, because it's just like that's the tone. But in this movie, like this kind of dark, desperate situation, having those kind of moments kind of takes me out of it a little bit. So I think if it had been played a little bit straighter and it's more just like fear and desperation, then that I think it maintains that tone more and makes it like, a 9 or a 10 out of 10. But as is, it's still like a really good genre film. And I think that's the thing. It's a genre film. It's not like, like I think on Netflix now, like this would not be considered one of the scariest films out there, because I think that genre twist does kind of take a little bit of that tension out of it, make it more of like, oh, okay. And the fact that aside from like your like lead like two characters in Juno and Sarah, a lot of the other characters you don't really care as much about. So you empathize and see like, oh, if I was in that situation, I would feel bad, or I would be like, you know, I would be scared.
Yeah.
But then you don't care as much about them because you didn't get as much characterization around them. Like the one friend thing is Rebecca, you got a little bit of characterization of, the one who got stabbed in the neck. But a lot of them you don't care as much about because you don't know as much about them, and they're just kind of fodder for the things that come. But the movie as a whole like does, you know, draw you in and is a great genre film. So to me, it's like, you know, a 7 out of 10, as opposed to like if it was a little bit played straighter, then I think it's more terrifying. And because like Alien, the first Alien, there's really not a hero moment in that. It's just survival. Aliens then has get away from her, you bitch, and all that stuff like that. So I feel like they kind of merge the elements of those, and then if you're all in on genre stuff, the second half is great, and then you just got really effective setup for it. As opposed to if you watch the first half and it gets you super into it, and then the genre elements kind of take you a little bit out from that. Because I know, like, because I think Julie, when we watched it, she had kind of the same lines. Like, she enjoyed it, but just thought some of the elements towards the end were a little goofier. So still, in terms of like a genre movie, a great genre movie. And if you're a genre fan, then it's, you know, close like a 9 or a 10.
Yeah.
To me, it was like a 7. Like, really good movie. I recommend people watch. But I just feel like a few elements within it, to me, held it back from being like an all-time classic.
Yeah. For me, like thinking back, again, this is when I think about films that were actually scary to me post 2000.
Yeah.
And just enjoyment levels. Like I haven't watched it since then.
Yeah.
So it's a weird thing because sometimes I may like love a film, but not really have the desire to watch it anymore.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? There's different types of viewing experiences, but like back then I probably would have given it a 10 out of 10. This time I think because the first time too, it catches you off guard, and I think it's a really exciting thing. This time I, again, put more value into that first half of the film, but I would still give this film at least a 9.
Yeah.
Because, I don't know, I just love it. Like, and I do like the genre stuff at it, but I just feel like they could have done a couple more things to, I don't know. Yeah, they could have kept up that terror. It's a different type of terror, but it's a genre terror that's normally not that scary at all. Well, it's just people getting eaten and stuff, you know, which we see all the time. The cave stuff is not an experience you get out of every single horror film.
Yeah, because it's pretty specific.
So that's a different thing. But like, honestly, when I think about films that actually like scared me or were kind of intense throughout, this is at least, you know, probably 50 minutes of it, because even there are some moments of the creature dwellings that is very good, you know, her being quiet and stuff like that, which happens a lot in every horror film and Alien and everything, but I still think some of those moments are really well handled, like this and They, which is a French home invasion film, and it also has like a grounded feel. Like those are only 2 films I can think of that where I think, oh, those were actually like very, I'm trying to think, what are some other great scary films post 2000?
Well, I mean, too, a lot of times, like, quote unquote, scary varies.
But I'm saying, like, for you, like, did any stay in mind, like, hey, that was actually really scary?
I'm trying to remember, because there's some stuff that, like, when I saw it, that, like, because a lot of times for me, the movies themselves aren't scary.
Yeah, I know.
It's just the things you think about after the movie.
I'm talking about movie experiences while you're watching the film.
Because, like, to me, it's more of, like, I've been tense during things. But not really scared.
Yeah.
And I've been tense during movies like
That's true.
No Country for Old Men, or like recently Get Out, towards the end of that movie, did have like my adrenaline flowing to see what happened to the characters.
Yeah.
But a lot of times to me, like movies, I'm like, oh, that's effective and scary. And then later when I go to take the trash out, then I'm like, oh, now I'm thinking about it. Now I'm creeped out.
Yeah.
But in the context of watching the movie, I'm not sitting there getting that scared by it.
Yeah, I mean, really, those are the only 2 I can think of that make me think like, oh, shit, you know, during moments of the movie. So for that, I think it holds a ton of value because it's very hard for me to find a film that I would consider actually scary.
Yeah.
So like that's why I rate it like a 9 out of 10 at least.
Yeah.
And again, it made me go see Doomsday, which I was kind of, if that would have been a trailer I would have saw and not had seen The Descent, I'd have thought, that's going to be stupid. But I thought, I'll give this a chance. And I did like it. I haven't had the desire to watch it again, really. I've seen it on TV some since then. But I'm way in on Neil Marshall. Like I get excited about his stuff. And when there's an episode of his that pops up, like on Game of Thrones or something, I'm like, all right, cool. I like this dude's work. So I'm excited to see Hellboy, to see what he does, even though there's been some fans like mad that Del Toro's not doing it. But, things don't work out sometimes. Yeah.
I mean, and too, something else I forgot to kind of mention is the movie is an all-female cast, but nobody is objectified or really sexualized. Because, being a male director, in 2005 or 6 was it's still a different era than today. And it was a horror film, because there's been a lot of horror films that feature all-female leads, essentially. Yeah. But oftentimes those movies still were very heavily sexualized or male gaze. This movie, like, they're wearing like tank tops and stuff that's very common sense for what they're doing and what you would wear for those environments.
Watching this too, I was thinking, okay, Neil Marshall actually, this is nearly a great Tomb Raider movie that is about like, you know what I mean? Like a powerful females.
Yeah.
And it is a rating, essentially in caves. Like he made like half of a Tomb Raider movie here.
Yeah.
Like that would be very good and intense.
Well, and then the point was like, you didn't have like lingering ass shots and you didn't have girls making out and stuff. No. Like there's like some point they kind of like hinted there may have been something with like characters, but it was more just like subtext or joke and didn't go anywhere.
Yeah.
And it was all just like friendships, and everybody was wearing, like I said, like reasonable clothes for cave diving.
Yeah.
So that was something that a Michael Bay directing this movie, they would have all been wearing like booty shorts and like have like halter tops. But hey, that film may have made 3 times as much at the box office too. That's true, unfortunately. but yeah, that was just something I thought about. Like a movie from 10 plus years ago where sexualizing the characters wasn't even a thing. It was just they were who they were and they had friendships, and it wasn't played up for gratification in that type of way. But
I mean, I think that's from just a basic human being who does not have a perspective on everything needs to be sexualized. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Unfortunately, there seems to be a lot of films that are that, which, hey, I'm fine with that sometimes. That's fun sometimes, but, it's...
That would have really detracted from what this movie
it absolutely would have, yeah.
And that would have had to go far more in the genre-heavy element of it and introduce the creatures.
It would have been
earlier.
goofier. It would not have been as harrowing because you would have been thinking about, okay, it would have pulled you way out of the experience.
Yeah. So as it was, you're like, oh, these are reasonable facsimiles of how these people would probably act. Yeah. But so overall, just a movie that do recommend checking out if you are recommending to people to check out, because I think there's enough there to get casual fans and hardcore fans. But so I guess that'll wrap up our discussion of The Descent.
Next week we're doing
The Town That Dreaded Sundown, the 2014 version. We'll talk about the original too and some of the stuff around the case, but the main thing is just the 2014 one's on Amazon Prime if you want to watch it now. And it's one of those slashers in recent years that didn't get a lot of press, and I think was kind of after the downturn after those Friday the 13th and Nightmare on Elm Street reboots hit. Because this is like 2014, I think. So it was kind of after those and based on a real event somewhat, and didn't get as much publicity or things. So we're talking about The Town That Dreaded Sundown. So you can read about that if you want to, about the actual cases. But that'll be the topic on the next podcast. So if you're listening via iTunes, you can do us a huge favor, leave a review there. That helps other people find the podcast and helps us move up the charts. We always enjoy getting comments on YouTube, because I know we see comments out there usually in every episode, or people comment on things like that, or on Facebook. You can always email us at podcast@housebyvideostore.com. You can find all the things we're doing at housebyvideostore.com. Find links there to our social media accounts, to Instagram, YouTube, Facebook, Twitter. You can find everything there. Like I said, I'd recommend following us on Instagram, because we post a lot of stuff there. It's just HBTVS_official. And then if you want to find us specifically on the internet, you can find me on Twitter at William Caps.
And I'm at Blevin Sean on Twitter.
And that will bring this episode of the House by the Video Store podcast to a close. Thanks for listening.
House by the Video